Well, today I'm with my friend Anand Kulkarni. He's a very successful serial entrepreneur in the AI space, founding three successful AI companies over the past 15 years. He's currently the CEO and founder of CoreStory.ai, which just raised their Series A funding of 32 million a few months ago. Congrats on that.
Thanks so much, Walter.
He's also took his last company, his last startup, to Series C with 82 million in total funding and about 100 employees. And his current startup, CoreStory, uses AI to reverse engineer your legacy code so you can modernize it way faster with greater insights than previously possible. So, Anand, it's great to have you today.
Hey, it's great to be here, Walter. Always love talking about Core Story and anything else that's top of mind.
Well, let's start with the problem that you guys are addressing.
If you look at the enterprise today, there are thousands and thousands of applications that are running in systems that are poorly understood and poorly maintained. Everyone is running on this old, dead software language called COBOL, where we've got to figure out how do we deal with all this legacy code that exists that's underpinning a whole bunch of essential systems we all rely on constantly. It's not just airlines, it's banking. Every time you run a credit card, you are touching some piece of COBOL code somewhere in the world. It's systems in insurance, in health, systems in government. Really, a lot of the societal infrastructure that we all rely on is running on this legacy code that needs to be understood, fixed, and maintained. Most enterprises don't have good solutions to do this. They pay uh, contracting shops an arm and a leg to try and fix their code when it breaks. But really, we have to get ahead of this. So what CoreStory does is builds custom purpose AI agents as part of an intelligence platform to reverse engineer these code bases. We deploy out our solution into a code base, we ingest that code base, we turn it back into requirements so that everyone understands what it does, and then we help enterprise customers use those requirements to update that code base, to fix that code base, or to modernize that code base. It's usually about 10 to 100 times faster than using human beings for the same problem. And it's also about 10 to 100 times more effective because companies don't want to spend the money on having contractors learn a bunch of COBOL, which means that people are actually motivated to go in and fix this old code. So that's what we do. We do
Hmm.
it well and we do it at scale for some of the biggest enterprises in the world.
Now, is it only COBOL code bases?
It's not only COBOL, great question. So I often use COBOL because it's the oldest code that most people have heard of. But actually, most code that is out there in the world is legacy code. It's about 10 trillion lines of code total that exist. And unless that code is actively being worked on by somebody right now, it is legacy code, which means that actually our market is much bigger than just COBOL systems. It's really everything that has been built in software that we're looking to improve and accelerate today. So if you're looking at some of our more recent customers, we are looking at customers who are supporting systems that they acquired that were maybe 10 years old, 15 years old, technology that's just a little bit out of date, that's still essential, still good code, but where nobody understands what it does, and we have to figure out how to maintain it, update it, enhance it. We see a lot of .NET, a lot of Java, um, stuff in PHP, even a bunch of stuff that's in some obscure technologies that are very popular. Um, Maybe the more modern version of that is Power Builder.
Hmm.
Maybe the less modern version of that is stuff like Lotus Notes applications. So we're pretty language agnostic. We can handle most of the frameworks that exist out in the world as long as you have access to the source code. We can do quite a bit with it, and even if you don't, we can still figure out ways through it.
I saw something about like a 300% ROI gain. What was that stat related to? Was that a customer success story or what was that?
That was a customer success story, and it was a good one. So we had a customer who deployed CoreStory into a system where they had a typical problem, large production software system, over 10 million lines of code, and they did not have enough developers around to deal with all the feature requests that were coming in on this production system. Very typical. Everyone in the enterprise faces giant feature backlogs, maintenance requests, and they only have so many heads around to do it. What they did was they deployed CoreStory out into that code base and said, please help us understand how we can speed up the process of fielding these tickets. CoreStory did what it usually does. It reverse engineered the code base into a spec, a full and complete index of how that code base operates, written in plain English, with references back into the source code to allow you to use it as a map or an atlas to understand what that code base does. We then paired that up with a coding agent. The coding agent allows you to look up which parts of the code base are affected by a given ticket or change, and then deploy those solutions together to autonomously field the ticket requests coming in. This is a pretty typical workflow that we deploy for customers to allow them to automate parts of their software engineering process. That was great for this customer because they got a lot more done than they were able to do ever before. They were able to essentially clear their backlog. When they talked about the ROI, they looked at how much they got done in terms of sprint velocity, how many hours of productive work were done, and how they were able to put their team members on useful work versus less useful work. So they didn't hire more developers, but they got about 3x the velocity that they were seeing before they implemented CoreStory. And they were able to keep up with feature requests as they were coming in. The developers on that team, of course, loved the outcome because they didn't have to work on the boring bug fixing minor issues that everyone hates. They got to work on the important architectural work that only humans can do well. And as engineers, nobody loves going and writing test cases. No one loves going and hunting down obscure bugs. What people really want to do is engineering work. And so CoreStory in situations like this lets engineering teams do real engineering work and lets AI, do what it's promising to do, which is fix a lot of the problems that we don't want humans to work with, and also keep up with the demands of what people are asking engineering teams to do today.
I think I saw you posted a billboard. Was that an actual billboard or was that just a graphic?
This one was a an AI generated billboard,
Okay, and
but
what did the billboard say about the requirements versus the code?
yeah, so it's a saying that we actually say a lot here at Core Story, and the idea is that in the AI era, um, code is ephemeral. Requirements are all that matter. We tell
Hmm.
people you can throw away your code. Okay, what do we mean by that? Well, code is really cheap to produce. It used to be this really difficult, expensive artifact for us to make, but code today is not hard to make. Any coding agent can spit out lots and lots of code. The hard part is not getting somebody to write code anymore because they can just spin up their favorite coding agent. Um, the hard part is knowing what you need to write. The hard part is knowing what you've written, and the hard part is knowing how to use that set of requirements as context for a coding agent so that it does the right thing. So what we tell people is that in the AI era, you need to think about what you are doing with modernization very differently. You're not moving from one coding framework into another coding framework the way that companies have done for the last 50 years. Instead, you are moving from code that does not have requirements or specifications to a system that has complete specifications. Once you've got those
Hmm.
specifications, you don't need to worry about what language you're in because coding agents, appropriately guided and with guardrails around them, can put your requirements into any framework that you want as a enterprise for the given area you're in. So when we think about what really matters for the new AI native engineering processes that are showing up everywhere, it's really not the code. It is the requirements and the guardrails that are being used with those specifications to make sure that our agents and our human architects know what they are building and are able to move the system into the right language for the job at a given time.
I heard you also talk about the living specification or the living spec. So how would you describe that?
The living spec is the idea that generating information about a code base is not a one-time activity that we do once every 6 months when documentation falls out of date. It's the idea that every time we change a code base, we should be updating our spec to represent the current state of that code base. That allows coding agents and human teams to correctly work with the current state of the spec wherever the code base is. The way this works in practice is that for our customers on CoreStory, every time they make a commit or every time they make a change into the code base, they can update that specification to match the current state of the code base, which means you never know what your code base is not doing. You never have situations where your code base lacks specs or lacks context. You're always familiar with what your code is doing, which means your coding agents will always provide correct solutions to what you are trying to build. It's a different way of thinking about maintaining context for a given code base. It's much closer to keeping everything into a continuous state of awareness as part of an AI native engineering practice. And we think about the living spec as one of the three foundational practices that you have to carry out to be an AI native engineering organization today.
And there's some aspect of automation, right, where the spec is automatically updated and growing and evolving, right?
That's right. So Core Story's approach here is very different than how people used to write specs, right? So we're not a human services team. We are a team of AI agents, right, that we sell and deploy into customers. These agents will ingest your code base, they will update your spec, and they will do it to reflect the current state of your code. And that's an automatic process. Of course, human beings can participate. Humans often like to structure the specs in a certain way to find particular cases where they want to explore the code in a given situation. But the process with CoreStory is autonomous. It's about automatically reverse engineering your code bases back into requirements.
What about the interaction? I heard you talk about chatting with is it with the
Mhm.
code base or is it with the agent or with the spec? Like how would you describe what you're asking questions of?
So some people call this chat with your code. It's better to call it chat with your application or chat with your
Okay.
specification. So we surface up a chat agent that you can use to interactively engage with the knowledge base for your application. And really, you're not talking to just your code. You're not talking to just your spec, you are talking to an underlying intelligence model that understands the business purpose of your application, that understands each of the behaviors, and that understands how these systems relate to the code that you've got. This is a pretty powerful and open-ended way to figure out some very powerful things about your application. I'll give you some examples of where we see customers using this. We have business analysts who use our tool, a lot of them, whose job it is to figure out what parts of the code base do certain things.
Hmm.
And they do this to help write tickets. They do this to help craft strategies. They can just ask these questions directly to the code base. Which parts of the code are affected if we were to introduce a new feature that did A, B, C, and D? And CoreStory will tell you directly because it has understood the business purpose of the application. You can ask these questions not with a keyword search, but in natural language, and the system will surface up the results that are relevant for that particular situation, which is a different way to think about how a business analyst does their job. You can do more sophisticated things. We see customers who are using CoreStory for things like M&A analysis, de-risking code bases that they've bought and inherited. They may ask questions like, well, which parts of this code base are exhibiting unusual behavior relative to these security parameters that we might surface up? Or which parts of these code bases are redundant with one another and overlap and need to be deprecated? All of these are powerful ways that we can do things like system rationalization exercises or think about ways to structure business strategies around code. We've even seen customers do things like ask, how many hours would it take to refactor this code or to add this stack of features that are on our roadmap? And what are the best approaches to do so? And because the system has a complete index of the code, it can give you precise, relevant, and business savvy answers to that specific set of
Hmm.
questions. Now, chat is sometimes thought about as a human feature, but actually the most common user of that chat system isn't always a human being in the organization. It's another agent that's been deployed. So some of the favorite code deployments we see, where folks are making use of that chat, or where a customer set us up next to Claude Code, and Claude Code is asking questions to the chat when it's trying to solve tasks. And Claude Code gets a lot more information than a human being does because it's got unlimited time to ask
Hmm.
questions and study the spec. It can ask really pertinent questions to the intelligence model, and it performs a lot better. We showed that there was a 44% performance improvement on one of the best understood software engineering benchmarks once you connect it up into CoreStory and let it talk to CoreStory's intelligence model. Really a powerful result.
So who would be an ideal customer or ideal prospect for you?
Well, so we work with a lot of enterprise teams who are looking to understand very large amounts of existing inherited code. Sometimes we go into the CIO's office where they're saying, "Hey, I'm in charge of a huge amount of 1,000 portfolio, uh, 1,000 sized portfolio of applications that I've inherited. I don't know what all of them do, and I need to figure out how to maintain these things." We also work with VPs of engineering who are looking to accelerate product deployments with AI. Often we're brought in at the point when a company is trying to figure out how to get more yield out of existing AI coding tools. In other cases, we're looking at places where a company is thinking about how to modernize and they're under pressure to do so. We see customers coming out of insurance, healthcare, finance, manufacturing, logistics, CPG, really all the systems that are in the world that we don't often think about that are essential for running the world. Those are the places where legacy code lives, and those are the places where we end up helping customers get more out of their AI strategy.
What's your preferred way for people to engage and learn more?
Well, I'd love to see folks who are watching this come and contact me directly, and I'll
Mhm.
happily get them directly into our systems. They can contact me at Anand at CoreStory.ai, ANAND at CoreStory.ai, or they can come fill out the form at CoreStory.ai. I also am very reachable on LinkedIn, on email, but I'm always excited to help spread the good word about what AI can do for legacy code.
Well, Anand, this has been super exciting learning about Core Story, and I'm looking forward to watching the success and growth of the company.
Hey, excited here. Thanks for taking the time, Walter.